Hello, everyone. This is Ross Carpri again with Keller Williams Metro South, coming to you today to discuss real estate in the Birmingham area market. And of course, I have with me Andy Gagliano from Gagliano Mortgage. And today we're going to change the format a little bit today. Andy had received an email about different things in the industry, and we're going to touch base with each other on that. The main focus today is the demand for houses on the market. Has it increased or decreased? Has the demand for buyers in the market, have they increased or decreased? And we're going to try to cover some of that with you today. And of course, if you have any questions about any of this over time, you can give me a call. I'm at 205-601-0123. Andy will give you his numbers as well, and you can discuss any of this with us, and we'll be more than happy to help you. So, Andy, how are you doing today?
Ross, I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you.
Good deal. Yeah, I got this article this morning, and of course, I thought the headline was very interesting and wondered really kind of how. So the headline, obviously, this is talking about numbers nationally, the real estate market nationally, and we've talked about this before about how the national market and the local market are not the same. They're not always going in the same direction.
Right.
Whereas buyer demand, seller supply, home prices, what we can see on a national level does not always correlate with what we see in Birmingham. And so I thought this was pretty interesting and worth talking about, and just wanted to get your opinion on some things because you're in the real estate market. I see a very small percentage of things, and because I'm on the mortgage side of things, I do get to see it a little bit, but just wanted to get your input on this. So the title of the article is "More Sellers Throwing in the Towel." And so it says sellers now outnumber buyers by the widest margin in records dating back to 2013.
Wow.
And it says that for the first time in 2 years, the number of homeowners pulling their houses off the market is falling. And now this entire article is based on some information passed out or dropped by Redfin. And we know that Redfin's a online website that lists a lot of houses for sale. So the article says that and I thought this is pretty interesting because to me it kind of shows how the market will often right itself if there are no outside factors or influences in the market. But this says that some sellers are delisting their homes or choosing not to list at all after seeing other houses sit on the market for weeks or months only to fetch less than the asking price. And that's what the senior economist Assad Khan over at Redfin said. So what are your thoughts on that? I mean, it seems like if there's this many buyers in the market and there's this many sellers, and sellers are starting to take their houses off the market because they're not selling, and the number of buyers stays the same, then we've just flip-flopped the market again, haven't we?
Correct. That's exactly right. And I am seeing that. As a matter of fact, just recently in the last couple of months, I have seen homes last on the market longer. The days of where you put your house on the market, and we're talking average now. It's not that way for everybody. But if you put your house on the market and you expect it to sell by the weekend, that's unrealistic nowadays.
Yeah.
It could happen, might happen, but chances are it won't, because people are taking their time. There's no more urgency in the market like it was, because people were taking advantage of the low interest rates. You figure we had rates 3.5%, 4%. People thought, why not? You know, if I'm going to fix my house up, I'm better off selling it and buying a house, and I can live in that for the next 30 years or whatever at a good interest rate.
Hmm.
That's changed. You know, the interest rates have gone up, and that has kind of shifted the market. Now I'm seeing more homes on the market for a little longer. I'm seeing people or houses that over, you know, after maybe say 30 days, they do a price reduction. You know, that was kind of one of those things that we thought was going to go away at some point because demand was so high and inventory was so low. Now we're seeing the opposite of that, which could actually affect prices of homes. If you've got more houses on the market than you have buyers for, then you either have to reduce your price to get activity going, or you just, like you just said, people are just taking it off the market and waiting for another time. If you're in a situation where you don't have to move, theoretically, that's the best position to be in from a seller standpoint. Because if you don't have to move, then you don't have to take the first offer you get. Okay. If you're in a situation where you do have to move, whether it be a job relocation, financial change, job change, anything that actually affects your lifestyle, then you have a different approach when you're selling your house. If you have to sell it to get out from under the mortgage, then you've got different priorities in place.
Right.
So that makes a lot of difference in how people get into the market these days. That's actually a few of the questions I ask is this necessary to move immediately, or can you hold it, you know, wait out until you get your price? So
Hmm.
I have seen that shift, and it's kind of a welcome shift from what we had back when homes were selling so quickly, because there was a time where people were purchasing homes and not even having it inspected
Right.
because they wanted the upper end to the offer. And nowadays that's not happening anymore. So I guess the market kind of trued itself, got it back to where supply and demand are kind of balancing out, and enables us to actually make decisions on homes instead of walking into the house and putting an offer right then because you don't want somebody else to buy it.
Right.
That's changed. That's changed some.
Yeah. Well, the article also says that, and I thought this was interesting, and it goes to further prove the point of what we just said. It says that because so many sellers are pulling back and taking their houses off the market, that is very likely the reason why home prices are still rising. And they're not rising as much now as they were back in 2020 during COVID, when, like you said, people were getting multiple offers, 10 offers, 15 offers on their home when it would come on the market. But home prices are still going up, and you just naturally would expect those home prices to come down if there were more sellers than buyers on the market, because the seller's trying to entice a buyer to buy the home. But this says, and this is something that I've seen in the headlines of the news for months. They still are talking about how home prices are rising. And it got me thinking or wondering, how is that the case if there are fewer buyers and more sellers? And this makes sense. Yes, we may have, and you tell me if you're seeing this, but we may have sellers who are putting their house on the market today, leaving it on the market for a month or 6 weeks, and if they don't get an offer, they're pulling it and not selling it.
Well, I
And
have I have seen that, and I tell you what I think a lot of it is. There are people that at one point in time said, I think we might move. If we do, then I'm not going to do anything to my house.
Mm-hmm.
And then the economy got to a point where they're like, well, I don't think we're going to move right now. We're going to just fix up what we have. So what you're having people do now is updating their home to the modern standards that we have now: open floor plans, granite, marble, the marble tubs, and the new styles of remodeling.
Right.
And of course, those houses, when you do that to your own personal home, that's going to increase the value of that home anyway. So there's your value increase, even though the amount of homes for sale are probably diminishing some, but they still have to get their return for that home if they do remodel. And I have seen people pay pretty top prices for homes if it's already remodeled and they don't have to do anything to move in. So
Yeah.
that's what you're having over time as well. You've got people that, a lot of these home shows that show about remodeling, adding on, putting hardwood floors, putting ceramic or whatever in. They're doing all that, and that's increasing the prices of homes as well. So that's a shift that I'm seeing a lot of,
Yeah.
because people over time just said, we weren't gonna try to move, but we decided to stay here and decided to fix the house up. Now we're running out of room, and we can't make new room, so we have to sell our home, and of course now it's got all the modern amenities, so that has an
Yeah.
effect on prices as well.
Yeah. The article goes on to say we're likely in the most buyer-friendly housing market since the 2008 financial crisis, which I think is a pretty interesting statement, and what we've seen over the past 4 weeks or so is we've seen mortgage rates come down.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but yet I'm not seeing that drop in mortgage rates bring more buyers into the market.
All right.
And so that's a pretty interesting dynamic, because in the past, when mortgage rates would drop, buyers would come filtering into the market and to get pre-approved and then, try to get a house under contract. But I'm not really seeing a whole lot of that right now. And so I thought that was pretty interesting, but it to me also goes to prove that if you're a buyer or want to be a buyer of real estate, now is probably a prime time to get in.
Sure.
Rates have come down. Sellers are willing to negotiate.
All right.
And, if just what I was saying a minute ago, if you've got more sellers than buyers out there, but the sellers are pulling their house off the market, eventually you're going to have more buyers than sellers.
All right.
And that market's going to flip-flop, and there's going to be a lot of buyers who are going to miss a really good opportunity right now to get out and buy. What do you think about that?
Well, I think you're right. And what I've noticed also is a lot of those people you're talking about probably are renting an apartment. They probably got out of their home or sold it and moved into an apartment. Well, those apartment complexes now don't really like month-to-month leases. They want you to commit to 12 months. Most of them, not all of them, but most of them do. So if you've renewed your lease arrangement, you're stuck where you are for a year. It doesn't matter what the interest rates are. Now, we tell people when you get to that 6-month mark, that's probably time to start trying to get pre-qualified to purchase a home.
Right.
Because you know as well as I do, it takes a little while to do all the backtracking and checking and checking, doing the credit checks and then all the things that we do to get a person pre-approved. And by the time, and then plus the apartment complex requires a 60-day notice. Well, here you are 6 months out. You're 4 months away from getting pre-approved. You follow? And then you got 2 months after that to put in your notice to move into the home. So it'll take up a 6-month period of time. And I think what we're seeing as well is, by the time, if the rates drop tomorrow, 'cause the rates are going to drop, and they're 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 going to drop, and those people are probably still locked into anywhere from 6 to 12 months of a lease. So their hands are kind of tied.
Yeah.
And I think that's what hurts a lot, industry wide. I think that's what hurts that.
Yeah. There's a statement in here that you kind of touched on, and I think it's worth mentioning is the article says that sellers are struggling to adapt to this market, that their expectations are anchored back to 2021 or 2022 when houses were just getting multiple offers for thousands of dollars over the asking price. And, this is talking about that some sellers who have to sell are entertaining lowball offers from real estate investors or even letting the house go into foreclosure, which is crazy thought. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Well, I tell you what I've noticed too is investment companies are capitalizing on this opportunity as well, because I've had a couple of homes listed that in one particular incident, the investment company was the most, even though the home was shown several times, the investment company was the most persistent. And by persistent, I don't mean, sending you something every week, but they increased their offer probably 35 to 40% over the initial offer, which is unheard of. Investment companies usually they want to make, say if a house is selling for 300, they want to make you an offer for 210,000. So they can go in and fix it up and make some money off of the resale.
Right.
But nowadays, I'm seeing them be more aggressive and come in at a higher number than you would expect them to. And if it's purchased as is, it's a good opportunity for the seller not to have any repairs made. Plus, the buyer gets it at a pretty reasonable price and can turn around and resell it as needed. So,
Yeah.
that's changed in the market as well.
Yeah. One last thing I thought was interesting, and we see this a good bit on our end on the mortgage side, and I know on the real estate side you see it as well. But the article also mentions how really they've not, in what they've said and pointed out in the article, they've not really mentioned much about new construction, and talked about how builders are offering just these tremendous incentives to get buyers to come into these new subdivisions that they're building.
Right.
And, a lot of them are offering lower than market interest rates. They're offering seller paid closing cost,
Right.
and things like that. And when if you're a homeowner in one of those subdivisions, and maybe you own a house that's 2-3 years old, you've been there for that long, but they're still building new houses in the back of the subdivision, you've got to compete against that as a seller.
Absolutely.
And that's tough. It's tough to compete.
And what everybody loves new, period.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter what it is, everybody loves new. But the flip side of that is it's hard for the builders to stay ahead of construction. Because if you need a house, say in the next 2 to 3 months, and you go talk to them about new construction, you're 8-9 months away.
Right.
And a lot of people can't wait that long.
Yeah.
So you've got that balance out as well. So, you're still kind of you're in the ball game when you put your house on the market in a neighborhood where the homes are still selling. But if they're spec homes that are up and completed, you got a problem. But if they're homes that are just empty lots, and you don't find too many builders nowadays that are putting a lot of spec homes
right
in the mix because they don't want to get stuck with that.
Yeah.
But if you've got a situation where they've got a lot of available lots in the neighborhood, and you want to sell your house, you got a good advantage of selling it, because most people can't wait 6, 8, 10 months to build a new house. So you have that to work with as well. So the times are changing, and scenarios are changing. I'm actually seeing a little bit more new construction, but again, it's very controlled because the builders just don't want to build 20, 25 homes as spec homes. They want
Right.
to know that they're sold.
Yeah.
Before they get started. So
Yeah. Well, that was it. You know, like I said, I felt like this was a really interesting article that, you know, they're in a lot of ways, local markets will vary a good deal from the national market,
mhm.
but still, you know, this article talks about a lot of things that we see, no matter, you know, if it's a local or the national market that you're talking about, just depending on where that market is in the buying cycle, whether it's a seller's market or a buyer's market or a perfectly good mix.
Right.
And so I thought it was a great article, brought up some great points. And, you know, to me, sitting where I'm sitting, I think it's a perfect time to be a buyer right now
Agree. I
and
agree.
to jump out there and get something if you're ready for it. And
Sure.
so, you know, if somebody has any questions about how they get started on the mortgage process, I'm happy to help them with that. I can be reached at 205-979-4412. I'm at extension 1. And Ross gave his number earlier, but do you want to give it again?
I do. It's 205-601-0123. And again, I would love to sit down and talk with you and try to discuss your situation. See if we can come up with the best plan for you, and we can approach it that way.
Yeah, and I just want to close by saying that Ross and I eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff. We love it. And so we love to talk about it. So if you have questions at all, don't worry about, oh, they're just going to try to sell me or push me into doing something. We're not. We love to help people, but we love to talk real estate and mortgages as well. And so we're happy to have conversations with you. So reach out to us, and, you know, if now's the right time for you, obviously we'd love to help you buy something.
Absolutely.
But if it's not, then, you know, what does it hurt to have a conversation? So,
Right. That's exactly
and I'll put a link to this article in the notes for
Uh-huh.
the video. And
Okay.
so then that way, somebody wants to read the article, they can click on the link and go check that out as well. And they'll be a little more inclined to know or be more educated about what we're talking about when talking about the article. So,
Perfect. Good deal.
all right.
Thank
Good
you
deal.
so much, folks. Thank you again, and let us know if we can help. And Andy, thank you so much, and look forward to seeing you next time.
Sounds great. Bye, everybody. Bye, Ross.
Care.